Y'all, I didn't want this. When Robert Kirkman's Skybound announced that they got the license for Hasbro's Transformers and G.I. Joe properties, I went, that's nice, leave me out of it. I didn't need 2 more comics to buy. I already buy too many, and honestly, I just would have bought one of them anyways because it was Transformers. I never liked G.I. Joe when I was a kid. It always felt like G.I. Joe was like a rival to Transformers to me, as opposed to like a companion piece. And if you're going to force childhood Ben to pick between transforming alien robots and soldiers, then I'm going to pick the cool transforming alien robots any day of the week, every day of the week. It even looked like Skybound heard my plea, announcing that their very first title in the line, a book called Void Rivals, would be neither Transformers or G.I. Joe. Excellent. All of this was safe to ignore, and I could go on in my life in peace. And then the Transformer Jetfire appeared at the end of Void Rivals issue 1. That issue sold out repeatedly. And people started talking online. More pieces of Transformers lore and history began to pop up the longer that Void Rivals went on. It seemed that Void Rivals would be an intricate and deliberate piece of this new Energon universe that Skybound kept talking about in interviews. I stayed strong, though. I kept my head down. I thoroughly ignored these books. And then, one of my friends loaned me, and then ended up giving me, his copy of Transformers issue 1. Ben, you just gotta read this, he said. And that was the beginning of the end for me. It's all been downhill since then. Like an addict, that one hit is what got me hooked. Transformers has been great. I've loved it. Made my top 10 of 2023 list. I've enjoyed the character study that the Duke and Cobra Commander miniseries have been as well. It's the perfect way to introduce a G.I. Joe skeptic like myself to the concept. They're slow burns that build things and allow me to connect with individual important characters in the franchise, investing me in their specific stories. Maybe I don't care about G.I. Joe, but by the end of the Duke miniseries, god dang it, I'm going to care about Duke, right? Once a G.I. Joe series or a Cobra series starts up, I'll know who all the important characters are and how they relate to each other, and by then I will probably have my personal favorites. I even started buying Void Rivals with issue 7, although it did take me a minute to find a good lot of Void Rivals 1 through 6 on eBay. I got one, but it took me a minute. You got me, Skybound. Damn you. You got me good. I didn't want this, but here I am. Clearly other people are down for it as well. Bleeding Cool reports that Skybound's various Hasbro titles have sold a collective 1,000,000 copies in just 9 months. Void Rivals sold 150,000 copies, a record for a new launching property. Cobra Commander sold 80,000, a G.I. Joe comic record, and Transformers issue 1 has sold over 200,000 issues, making it the highest-selling Transformers launch in the franchise's comic book history. And they have comic books going as far back as the 1980s, during the height of Transformers' popularity. Reading the 3rd issue of Duke's miniseries, though, something about Skybound's take on these books really stood out to me, though. It hadn't clicked with me before when I was doing my reading, but once it did click with me, it was clear to me how important this single basic concept was to Skybound's success with these titles. Let me show you what it is.
Well, Dirge, thanks to our embiggening ray, we've been able to increase your size, which allowed us to steal all of these gold bars from Fort Knox. Oh, they're so beautiful, so beautiful. Using this influx of wealth, not even the mighty Megatron will be able to stand against the power of Starscream. Oh, I dropped my blaster. How inconvenient. Excuse me a moment, Dirge.
No, that's perfectly okay, Starscream. Plus, taking all that height from Godzilla and putting it in me leaves Earth with one less defender.
That's what you think, boys.
What? Captain America just burst through our wall, but how could he find out where we were? Oh no!
That's right, Starscream, and I'm not the only hero on your tail. Isn't that right, boys?
It sure is, Cap. I'm really looking forward to punching these Decepticreeps all the way back to Cybertron.
And you know that Havoc from the X-Men is always ready to help. In fact, I'll use my plasma energy beams to charge up little Godzilla. Isn't that right?
Yeah, I could use all the energy boosts I can get. Oh no, now that he's charged up Godzilla, I don't think my laser blasters are gonna be much good. Pew 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 pew. No, they're just shrugging off my thickened hide. Die, turds, die.
Not to worry. Even with Dirge gone, I'll escape with my gold bars, and no one will be able to stop Starscream from taking over the planet Earth.
Well, not so fast there, friend.
What? Is that a giant Kermit?
Well, I'm afraid so. You see, the Autobots used your embiggening technology, they reverse engineered it, and they put the rest of Godzilla's height in me! So now I'm giant-sized! Huh, isn't that weird?
This is absurd! There's no way I'll be defeated by a giant frog with a banjo!
Well, I guess that's where you're wrong.
Oh no!
So at the end of Duke issue 3, spoilers if you haven't gotten there yet, at the end of issue 3, Duke is captured by a US government force and thrown in a secret prison, basically. There, he learns that the person in the cell next to him is the Baroness, who I know as the female character of the terrorist organization Cobra. I don't know a lot about G.I. Joe. Like I said, I'm traditionally not a fan, but I am a straight male who was into comics and geeky stuff, so I am very aware of who the Baroness is. Author Joshua Williamson clearly planned to have the two team up, if only temporarily, but this little bit of storytelling still threw me for a loop. Why would he do this? She's the bad guy. He's a good guy. Is she gonna, start off this universe as a G.I. Joe, but then go bad? Duke, after all, is on the run from the United States government. Maybe she invites him into Cobra. Maybe he joins Cobra for a time. Skybound has not shied away from eschewing established Hasbro plot elements. Hell, one of the most well-recognized Transformers, Bumblebee, got his face shot off in issue 1 of that comic. He is currently dead. You know, as dead as an alien space robot that transforms can be. I found myself replaying the issue in my head over the next couple days, looking for clues, checking for characters that I might have missed in my particular brand of G.I. Joe ignorance. That's when it clicked for me. That is why Skybound works. Because reading these comics feels like playing with your toys when you're a kid. Jetfire shows up in Void Rivals. Starscream kills Duke's best friend, sending him on a quest to hunt down the source of these murderous robots. Cobra Commander studies the technology of Megatron and is working to use the Energon as a power source. Any Hasbro concept can show up in any Skybound title, and that keeps me guessing as to what happens next. It feels like somebody turned over the toy box and they're just mashing action figures together. It's exciting, it's interesting, and most importantly for any comic book, it's fun. Best of all, at least for right now, it all makes sense pretty well, too. The connections between the books all work, and they demonstrate how an Energon universe, with what feels like completely disparate plot elements, can fit together. Transformers and G.I. Joe have teamed up before in comic book history, most notably for me during the early 2000s when Dreamwave had the license. But they set that first Transformers G.I. Joe team-up story back in 1939 during World War II, which is like a weird plot element that doesn't fit either Transformers or G.I. Joe history as far as I know. And I haven't read those issues, so maybe they justify it and it completely works. I will fully admit. But that doesn't help sell me on the comics in the way that Skybound has sold me on these comics, right? It seemed silly and forced, and yes, I know I am talking about comic books based on children's cartoons. Silly is part of the concept. It's baked into it. But it should be fun silly, not roll my eyes silly. Somehow, so far, the Energon universe has been fun silly, and I am glad at the end of the day that they got me to buy their titles, that I'm trying them out. Keep it up, everybody. I'm happy to be along for the ride. If you enjoyed this episode of Breakdown, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you are not subscribed to the show, then click on that as well. I love getting feedback, and I would really appreciate it if you did so. If you have any questions, concerns, or would like to suggest a comic or a series to me, Breakdown can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on a variety of podcast platforms, with links in the description for this episode below, as well as the email cbbreakdown@gmail.com. Thank you for your time and attention.